There's this white powder, costs about $2 a bag, sitting on the bottom shelf of literally every hardware store in the country, and I'd bet almost nobody reading this has ever picked it up. Which is wild, because this exact powder used to cool entire farmhouses, entire villages, through the worst heat of summer. No air conditioner, no electricity, no monthly bill, just a bucket, water, and one forgotten white powder. And here's the thing that really got me when I first learned about it. This isn't some random hack somebody made up last week. It's ancient, genuinely ancient, showing up in multiple places on Earth that had zero contact with each other. So stick with me, because by the end of this video, I'm going to show you the actual numbers from an experiment I ran myself. And one of those numbers made me go back and grab a second thermometer because I didn't believe the first one. Let me start with my grandmother, because honestly, this whole thing starts with her for me. Every single spring, like clockwork, she'd pull this old wooden bucket out of the shed, dump in this white powder, stir it up with water until it looked kind of like watered-down milk, and then she'd climb up a ladder and just start painting the walls. The ones that took the worst hit from the afternoon sun. She never once explained why, never mentioned science, never said the word temperature. She'd just smile and go. The summer sun always loses against a bright wall. That was the whole explanation I got as a kid. Honestly, I thought she just liked how clean white looked. I genuinely believed that for years. Turns out, no, she wasn't doing a chore for the aesthetic. She was doing actual physics with a paintbrush, and she'd never once needed a textbook to figure it out. So here's the part where I explain the actual why. And I promise it's simpler than you'd think, because you've already felt this yourself, probably 100 times without thinking about it. You ever walk across a parking lot in a black t-shirt on a hot day? Within maybe 2 minutes you can feel the sun basically cooking into that fabric. Now do the same walk in a white shirt. Completely different experience. Same sun, same day, same you, wildly different amount of heat. That's not in your head. That's real. Dark surfaces soak up sunlight and turn it into heat. Light surfaces bounce a huge chunk of that sunlight right back out before it ever gets the chance to become heat in the first place. That's it. That's the entire secret behind this whole video. My grandmother wasn't cooling a hot house after the fact. She was stopping the house from getting hot in the first place, which, if you think about it, is a completely different strategy than what basically every modern homeowner does now. Waiting for the house to become an oven and then throwing electricity at the problem afterward. Okay, so what actually is this powder? It's lime. Specifically what hardware stores label as hydrated lime or type S lime. And it's been around forever because it's just crushed limestone mixed with a little water. There's nothing fancy about it. It's about as unglamorous as building materials get. Mix this stuff with water and you get whitewash, this bright, chalky white coating that's been brushed onto barns, churches, garden walls, and farmhouses for, and I mean this literally, thousands of years. Now here's where it gets genuinely interesting to me. This isn't just a farmhouse thing. Not even close. Go look at pictures of those famous whitewashed villages scattered across the Greek islands. The ones where literally every single building glows this blinding white under the Mediterranean sun. That's not a design trend. That's survival. A dark house under that kind of sun would have been unbearable, maybe genuinely dangerous, to live in. So for thousands of years, people crushed their own local limestone and painted everything the sun could reach. And it keeps going. Whitewashed adobe walls all across parts of the Middle East, where the sun is honestly brutal. Whitewashed courtyard homes documented in parts of India going back centuries, way before anybody had a fancy term like solar reflectance. Completely different continents. Completely different cultures. Zero contact between any of them. And they all landed on the exact same solution, using basically the exact same cheap material. And that's the part that really sticks with me. When people who could never have possibly talked to each other all figure out the same trick independently, that's not some weird coincidence. That's just correct physics, getting rediscovered over and over by anyone who actually paid attention to their own uncomfortably hot house. Modern scientists eventually caught up to this and gave it fancy names, things like solar reflectance and surface albedo, and they'll show you graphs and diagrams to explain it. But my grandmother explained the exact same concept with a bucket, a brush, and one sentence about the sun losing against a bright wall. Somehow, both of them ended up in exactly the same place. Alright, so that's the story, and that's the physics behind it. Stories are nice, but numbers aren't. So I ran my own experiment. Here's what I did. I went and bought 2 identical wooden panels from the same hardware store. Same size, same thickness, same wood, literally cut from the same batch. I set them up side by side in my backyard, same exact spot, same exact angle to the sun, nothing different between them except one thing. One panel I left completely natural, dark wood, untouched. The other one got 2 thin coats of that same lime whitewash my grandmother used to mix. Done the exact same simple way, water and powder, nothing fancy. Then I just waited. Let both panels sit out there all day, soaking up the same sun, same wind, same everything. No shade, no tricks, nothing to skew the results one way or the other. Around 3 in the afternoon, which if you've ever been outside in summer you know is basically peak. Why did I leave the house? The air temperature was sitting around 95 degrees. I grabbed an infrared thermometer and walked over to check both panels. Honestly, before I even looked at the numbers, I could feel the difference just holding my hand a few inches above each one. The dark panel was throwing off heat like a stovetop, that kind of heat you feel on your skin before you even touch anything. The white one felt, I'm not exaggerating, almost cool to be near, like standing in the shade of something even though there was no shade anywhere around it. I honestly expected maybe 10, 15 degrees at most. That's what I would have called impressive going in. What happened next wasn't even close to that. But feelings lie sometimes. Numbers don't. So here's what the thermometer actually said. The dark panel, 136 degrees. That's not a typo. 136 degrees Fahrenheit. Just sitting there in regular afternoon sun, no special conditions, nothing extreme, just an ordinary hot day. The whitewashed panel, same sun, same minute, sitting a few inches away, 98 degrees. That's a 38-degree gap, created by nothing except a thin coat of lime and water. I actually grabbed a second thermometer because I figured the first one had to be broken. It wasn't. Same result, second reading in a row, and I ran the whole test again the next afternoon just to be sure it wasn't some fluke. Same story, same gap, give or take a degree or two. Think about that for a second. Your roof can easily receive thousands of watts of sunlight every single hour. If you can reflect a large portion of that energy away before it ever enters your home, your house starts the day cooler instead of spending the whole afternoon trying to recover from it. And here's the thing that number actually means, in plain terms. That missing heat, all 38 degrees of it, didn't get removed by anything. It never showed up in the first place. Every bit of sunlight that bounced off that white surface was heat that simply never had the chance to soak into the wood, never had the chance to radiate through a wall, never had the chance to build up inside a room and make your air conditioner work overtime trying to fight it off later. That's honestly the whole philosophy behind this entire method. Modern homes wait for the heat to get in, then spend electricity trying to kick it back out. This old trick just doesn't let it in to begin with. Completely different approach, using a material that costs about as much as a candy bar. And it turns out my backyard experiment wasn't exactly breaking new ground, either. Researchers have been chasing this same basic idea for decades, just with bigger budgets and fancier instruments. Back in the 70s, a lab out west painted the same basic lime coating onto a test roof and measured a temperature gap large enough that the building underneath barely needed mechanical cooling all summer. Years later, researchers at a university managed to formulate what got independently measured as one of the whitest coatings ever created, reflecting such a massive percentage of incoming sunlight that a surface coated with it could actually measure cooler than the surrounding air, even sitting in direct sun. It made real headlines for a little while. And underneath all the fancy instruments and official measurements, it was the exact same principle my grandmother was using with a bucket and a paintbrush, just confirmed with better tools. So if this actually works this well, and clearly it does, both in my backyard and in an actual laboratory, the obvious question is, why did basically everyone just stop using it? Turns out it's not some big dramatic conspiracy. It's honestly kind of boring, if I'm being real with you. Around the middle of last century, a few things happened around the same time. Modern synthetic paint got cheap and widely available, and it lasted way longer than whitewash, which needs a fresh coat every year or two. Air conditioning started showing up in regular houses, not just fancy hotels and office buildings, and having one practically became a status symbol of modern living. So instead of stopping heat from getting in, people just started removing it after the fact with a machine, which felt more modern, required less yearly maintenance, and didn't mean climbing a ladder every spring. And slowly, one generation just stopped teaching the next one about the bucket and the brush. The knowledge wasn't lost because it failed. It disappeared because something easier replaced it. Okay, let's actually get practical, because a video full of history and no action isn't much use to you. Here's exactly what you need. 1 bag of type S hydrated lime, $2 to $5 depending where you shop. A clean bucket, water, a thick brush or a roller, whichever you're more comfortable working with. You're going to pour some of that lime powder into the bucket and slowly add water, stirring the whole time, until it looks like thin milk. Not thick like paint from a can. Thin. If it's not runny enough to almost pour like milk straight from a jug, add a little more water and keep stirring until any lumps are fully worked out. Pick a mild day if you can, not the absolute peak of a heat wave, since whitewash sets better when it's not drying too fast in direct blazing sun. Early morning or a cloudy afternoon works well. Grab your brush or roller and apply it to whatever sun-facing surface you're trying to protect. A wall, a shed roof, a fence, whatever's getting hammered hardest by afternoon sun. First coat is going to look thin, streaky, kind of disappointing honestly, almost see-through in spots. That's completely normal. Don't panic and don't add more lime to compensate. Let it dry fully, ideally overnight. Then put on a second coat, and that's the one where it finally comes up properly bright and solid white. 2 coats, dried in between, and you're done. One more small tip. If you've got leftover mixed whitewash, it doesn't keep well once it's wet, so plan your surface area ahead of time rather than trying to save the extra for later. It's cheap enough that a little waste isn't a big deal. Quick safety note before you run off and do this. Wear gloves and eye protection while mixing hydrated lime, because it's alkaline and can irritate skin or eyes before it fully cures. Work outdoors or somewhere well ventilated, and rinse off immediately if any splashes onto bare skin. Once it's dried and cured on the surface, it's stable and safe. Now let me be straight with you about what this actually does and doesn't do, because I'm not trying to oversell you on a magic fix here. This method shines against direct, dry heat, sunlight hammering a roof or a wall, which is genuinely most of what makes a house miserable in summer. In really humid climates, it does less, because humidity is a completely different problem that reflecting sunlight alone doesn't solve. It's also not a fix for poor insulation or old, leaky windows. Those are separate issues with separate solutions. And it's not permanent. Weather wears it down, so plan on refreshing it about once a year, usually in spring, same as any small seasonal maintenance job around the house. A few more things people always ask me. Does this actually cool the inside of the house, or just the outside surface? Both. Honestly, since a cooler wall or roof radiates a lot less heat into the rooms behind it, which is exactly what my backyard panels demonstrated. Is it hard to do? Not really. It's a straightforward 2-coat job that most people can finish in an afternoon with basic tools. Will it look weird on a modern house? That depends on your taste and your neighborhood rules. Honestly, some HOAs have restrictions on bright reflective exterior colors, so it's worth a quick check before you commit a whole roof to it. Can I use it on brick or stucco instead of wood? Generally, yes. Lime whitewash has been used on stone, brick, and plaster surfaces for centuries, though very smooth painted surfaces may need light sanding first so the whitewash actually adheres properly. So here's where I land on all this. My grandmother never once called any of this engineering. To her, it was just spring cleaning with a purpose. A bucket, a brush, a couple dollars of powder, and a house that stayed noticeably more livable through another brutal summer. That's genuinely how this kind of knowledge survived for centuries, not through some textbook, but through one person showing another person over and over, generation after generation, until eventually a lot of us just stopped passing it down. If you decide to try this, start with something small, a shed, a garden wall, or a fence, and measure the surface temperature before and after with any cheap thermometer. I'd genuinely love to know what numbers you get in your own climate. I read every comment, and half my video ideas honestly come straight from what you all tell me you tried. Maybe our grandparents weren't fighting the heat with bigger machines. Maybe they were simply stopping the heat from arriving in the first place. If you enjoy rediscovering forgotten ideas that still work today, subscribe. There are thousands more waiting to be remembered.